Hi, I'm Adam Jennings, and this is Awaiting Approval, a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. Today, I'm joined by David Sheldon-Hicks, founder at Territory Studio, for a relaxed two-way conversation about his journey, the lessons he's learned, and what it's taken to lead with creativity and honesty. David, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting to you today.
Likewise. For those that have seen the season 1 episode, some of these questions will be similar. We're also throwing some new ones in for this season. But to get us started, and for people listening and watching to know a little bit more about you, if we were to meet in person to record this today, where would you take me and what would you order to drink?
Do you know what? I've been listening to some of your other guests and they've come up with such good answers, and they've always had a really good story behind them. And I was really struggling with this on the way. I was doing my dog walk this morning and just thinking about what would I say. Do you know what? It probably would be at this time of year with a hot drink, a tea or a hot chocolate, just walking around the garden. Or outside in general, just getting out. I'm stuck in my dark office. I haven't got my dark office behind me today, but typically I'm stuck in a very dark office, not seeing an awful lot of vitamin D or anything like that. So whenever given the opportunity, I just want to get outside.
Well, then I'll join you in spirit in your garden with a mug of, I'll go for a hot chocolate, and I'll raise that metaphorical glass to cheer you on for the rest of this recording. If I know you're not in your usual space, so this might not work, but is there something around you that an item, an object that gives a little bit of insight into you, who you are, how you see the world?
So if I was in my office right now, it would be messy. Relatively messy. I'm a designer at heart, so the bare bones is really beautiful. However, just the sheer day-to-day activity, I've got a corner of just poster tubes, various different posters that we've created, kind of limited runs of different films that we've worked on that we're really proud of, that we give out as gifts. And there's still some of those just kind of sitting around. There's a load of design and business books that I will read at some point, but I haven't just got to just yet. There's like a shelf of guilt of things that I haven't read, and then there's another pile of guilt of other things that I've got to read, and then there's normally at least 5 or 6 scripts, film scripts of projects either that we're working on or that are coming through that I really do need to read it at some point and kind of get to the last page. I'm terrible for getting about 2/3 of the way through a film script and then not. So the intent is designed control. The reality is not that at all. But it's an acceptable level of mess that is still tidied up and moved around a little bit over the weeks.
I love it. Organized chaos.
Yeah, exactly. That's it's as good as my guilt will allow.
Right. And talking of those film scripts, is there a movie or a TV show or a song or something like that that you have seen recently that has had a emotional response from you?
It's fun, it's funny. I think films or music, there's so much. It's a bit like smells as well. You attach them to a particular time in your life. At the moment, I'm really bonding with my daughter, who's in the other room. I'm well, but we're really coming close because we both love Japanese animation. We both love anime, and we kind of avidly consume a lot of Crunchyroll series. So we've been following Demon Slayer for the last, I don't know how long, 6 months, getting through all of that TV series. And now they're culminating it in 3 films. The first one came out this year, which is doing incredibly well. And because it's so far away from the day-to-day movies that I work on, we don't typically work. We work on Hollywood movies rather than Japanese animation. I think because it's so far from that, it becomes complete escapism. It doesn't feel like work. When I'm watching it, it doesn't feel like work. I can just appreciate it for what it is. So at the moment, not K-pop Demon Hunter, whilst that was a very good film, it's the Demon Slayer TV series and movies that I'm particularly addicted to.
I love that connection with your daughter as well. I know there are so many movies and TV shows that, my kids now are 17 and almost 21, but I think back to certain things, or I'm reminded of a movie or a TV show, and I'm instantly back to, 6 in the morning, uh, having them almost asleep on my chest as we kind of watch something to calm them down from a nightmare, or
Yeah.
just that start of the day routine. I had a whole afternoon not that long ago fondly reminiscing about Balamory when they announced that they were going to redo or do a new set of those shows. And so then all the songs are all still lodged in the back of my brain, and all of them came back with all of the lyrics because I've watched those shows so many times with my two when they were younger.
Yeah, do you know what? I think there's some things that if you just heard the first few notes or the first few words, you'd immediately suddenly realize you have the entire memory for it. So, The Gruffalo is one of those books. I must have read that to my son hundreds of times. You just feed me the first few lines. I'm pretty sure I could then recount it page for page afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I love that.
When I was a kid, I had a set that was a little book and a cassette tape from the very first Star Trek movie, the Star Trek the Motion Picture. And so the idea was you'd learn to read. There was maybe one sentence on each page, and you'd listen to the cassette, and there was this little beep, 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 beep kind of noise that told you that's when you had to turn the page. And recently, I thought about this maybe a year ago, something like that, and I just searched for it on YouTube, and someone had uploaded a recording of the cassette, and I still knew exactly where the little pips were going to come in because my mind was sort of hearing ahead of what I was actually hearing. So all that stuff gets lodged in there for years, which is fascinating, I think, and incredible. And when we think about, things that are getting lodged from way back when, I'd love to go through your career as a kind of bullet point. If you could just take the next few minutes from where you started in your career to where you are now. Don't necessarily
Yeah.
need to do every single step, but just the kind of key milestones.
No, it's funny. I mean, because obviously we had a chat before getting into this podcast some weeks ago, and I think you made me think about. There was something in one of the questions you asked me, or one of the thoughts that you asked me, where it kind of made me think, "Gosh, do you know what? I've never thanked those people along the way." And so I actually posted more recently just this thought around somebody that had really helped me, and in fact there's a lot of people. Yes, my some of the studios that I've worked with have been great and amazing in their own right, and got to work on some incredible projects, but actually it's the people that have believed in me and given me the next step that I'm just kind of, looking back, I just realize so much more now that I'm in a position to do the same for others. It's a bit like, being a parent, or maybe it's like becoming a grandparent. You kind of you empathize with the stages that people are going through. So I studied at Portsmouth University, well, they called it communication design, which was really clever of them actually, because it was graphic design with screens, and that meant what that meant back then with dial-up modems was director and CD-ROMs, so kind of creating interaction with things like Lingo and Flash. And Flash was amazing, obviously, because you do incredible animations in that. So I did love Flash. I bought myself a PC, so I learned things like 3D Studio Max and things like that. So studied at Portsmouth. I got a Portsmouth were very good at kind of encouraging their students to enter into student design awards, things like DNAD, New Blood, and all that sort of thing. And I was fortunate enough to win an award in Germany, and part of that prize, I mean, the cash prize as a student was pretty critical, but there was a cash prize to it. But also got a work placement. So when I graduated, I had kind of 3 to 6 months out in Berlin working at a studio called Pixel Park. And it was a really interesting moment to go to Pixel Park because the .com crash had just happened. So they were kind of figuring out what was going on in the world, and got to part of my post was kind of acknowledging that I had to somehow learn how to use an SGI workstation, which is this big, powerful box at the time. They cost a fortune, and you could run pretty much one graphics software on them. So proper old tech. But I had to learn how to use 3D Max in German on that at Pixelpark, which was a trial by fire, really. But Andreas, the creative director there, just taught me about great graphic design, great composition, dealing with clients, all that kind of stuff. So it was a great bedding in for me, and also just to do it in another country, I think kind of expanded my my view of the world. So that was great. Then came back and had another work placement at in Bristol, actually, which it still has a soft spot in my heart in terms of cities, and went to work as a junior designer for a company called Big Squid, who were doing lots of broadcast graphics for documentaries. And I really enjoyed it. It was Richard was the owner of the studio, and he was very impassioned creative director that kind of saw the beauty in everything. And we were doing what could have been quite dry documentaries and kind of these little motion design moments to kind of tell a particular historical or scientific storytelling point. And we just did some really good work. It's kind of taking quite dry things and making them quite beautiful. So I went from there. Then I came into London, and I got my first job as a junior digital designer, I think the term was. Don't quote me on that. I can't actually remember what the title was, at AKQA. And that was incredible, because AKQA at that point, obviously it was maybe a year after the dot-com crash now. They were rejuvenated. They were going back at it. They had incredible accounts like Nike and Orange. I got to work with just some incredible people for a period of time. But it was there that I think I realized I love interfaces, and I love websites and digital and everything else. But I also really, really love motion and moving image. And so I needed to move into that. And that's when I transitioned over into a studio who no longer exists, but were a very, very special studio for me. And I went in as a junior motion designer. So in the space of 2 years, I think I had a lot of different jobs bouncing around, kind of finding my feet, finding my way. And I went to Peacock, and the creative director in the motion department, Mark, and there was another guy, Dan, both really took me under their wing, showed me just the basics of preparing files in the right way, telling a story over a 30-second animation, because they were doing a lot of commercials. They were also doing a lot of music videos. So worked there, learned how to deliver things for broadcast, and there were these great big edit suites with great big video decks and these digital beta tapes. So again, old technology, but a great industrial kind of thing. And then learning how to deal with clients. They put me in front of celebrities, people like Kate Bush, and like bands like the Black Eyed Peas were going through there, or Coldplay, or like some really incredible names. So that was slightly overwhelming, actually. So I think I had a few years there, then jumped onto a company called Fold 7, which is where I met my business partner. And they were a great kind of hybrid at the time of a motion studio and a graphic design studio. Then I went freelance, worked at lots of different studios that I really admired, learned how to work on film sets. So I worked on Casino Royale and the Dark Knight movie, doing the on-set screen graphics. And that, I think, is what people associate, with Territory Studios, kind of known for those kind of computer displays and holograms for feature films. That really came out of, I went to this corporate video company called AMV based in Slough, and they'd won this hardware contract to deliver computers for the on-set delivery for James Bond, but they needed somebody to do the motion graphics side. So there was a small little motion design team that were figuring out how to deliver the graphics for that, and I was one of them. So that was a great lesson. And Andrew, the kind of the leader in that team, had a really high quality bar, always really pushed the team to do better. So learned a lot in that respect. And then I'm getting a little bit fuzzy around my history, but I then went to freelance at a place called Why Not Associates. One day, they were really close to Fold 7, where my now business partner, Nick, was working at the time. We went and had a kind of a stroll to a sandwich shop in Shoreditch. And that's when we started talking about forming our own studio, really. And because I'd worked at places like Why Not Associates and Fold 7 and all these other studios that did lots of different things in amazing ways. What I loved about Why Not Associates was they were graphic designers at heart, but they wouldn't limit themselves in terms of their delivery. So they did the comedy carpet in Blackpool, and they did some quite structural things with graphic design, but then would do a TV commercial and then would do a printed book. So I loved that about Why Not. And I loved the rigor and the commercial acumen of somewhere like AKQA. So I had all these different ideas, and Nick did too, around what we wanted from the studio. And so 2010, we won our first project for Electronic Arts, being Medal of Honor. Took on this kind of it was like an attic room. It's the best way to describe it, in Hatton Garden with friends who had a company there, and we could squeeze in it was about 4 or 5 of us, I think, in the end, with freelancers, and we just squeezed up into this little space to kind of start the studio up, work on Medal of Honor, and then start working on some other computer games and kind of, yeah. When we won our first film, Prometheus, I think we delivered Prometheus whilst we were in Hatton Garden, and then we moved to Berry Street in Clerkenwell just after that to kind of continue the project. But yeah, it was really Prometheus that launched us in terms of doing screen graphics under the Territory Studio banner, which in hindsight is a great title to be attached to, because Ridley is quite an inspirational character. And I do find that the other creative leaders that I work with, I end up learning a lot from. He was very good at enabling his teams and only making decisions when absolutely necessary to kind of re-steer it in the right way. But once he'd briefed people correctly, he would just kind of leave them to it, and there was a lot of trust there. So I learned a lot from working with him and Arthur Max, his production designer, and George Simons, the graphic designer, and that whole team. And then I've gone on to, I think, learn from a lot of other really incredible people that are often not big names, actually. They're kind of unsung people that work in our industry and just very good at what they do and very generous with their time in terms of teaching.
Ooh. There's so much there that I want to unpack. So kind of going back to the beginning of that, and the influences that you had, there was a lot that resonated actually with me, like the idea that you were plonked in front of those famous people and bands and musicians and whatnot. And that was a sort of trial by fire of how to deal with creative talent that had reached a certain level, right? Because there's a creative talent and the egos and the eccentricities and the different sort of vision of the world. But then when that is elevated by fame, stardom, money, excess, whatever it is, sometimes then that means you need to handle that in a slightly different way as a service provider. And for me, like I worked in theatre for many years before I got into design, on stage and backstage. And part of the backstage stuff was looking after the talent that was coming to the regional touring theatres. And so, and that was all sorts of names, from people who won't mean anything to anyone anymore, like Gordon Kay from LOLO, to Charlton Heston and his wife. Like, so there's this huge range. And I was very, very young and put in charge of this. And so I completely understand that, perhaps for me at least, deer in a headlight of, oh crap, what do I do here? Learning, what, this is how everybody puts their trousers on, right? This is how everybody makes a cup of coffee. And so where is the common ground that we can find to then build a working relationship on top of? But what struck me was, you talked about going to Germany and learning with the workstation, the Silicon Graphics workstation there, in a different country. And I'm fascinated to know if if all of this sort of wide breadth of experience that you had in that 2 years before you then decided, no, motion is where I want to be, this is what I want to work with. Do you think doing that helped you find your route, find your niche? Do you think it helped guide you to where you need to be?
Probably not in the way. I think I always knew that I wanted to be in animation. I think I always knew that I wanted to make things move. I think I discovered design later on. I'm quite tunnel vision. I'm quite when I've got my sights set on something, I'm quite laser focused, and I'm realizing I've not been officially diagnosed, but I'm going to go for it soon. My son was diagnosed with autism in the last couple of years, and I see the same traits in him as I do in me, which is this ability to, once I've made up my mind, well, why else would I do anything else? I'm just going to go for that. And I think at a very early age, I mean, I don't know if we can mention this name, but I'm going to mention it anyway. I was watching Rolf's Cartoon Club on TV and seeing Rolf kind of bring alive animation. And then there was some wonderful things on Channel 4 where they used to do documentaries about the behind the scenes of Aardman animation, all that kind of stuff. And then there were also some, I think probably on one of the other TV channels, where they were showing the behind the scenes of things like Star Wars and Industrial Light and Magic and all those sorts of companies. And it just constantly brought it alive for me. And I think growing up in the 80s, in my formative years, where everything that they put on TV was about being really excited about making something. Like, even if you think about the A-Team, like the A-Team always kind of got locked up in this garage somehow, and they would build out this kind of cool vehicle that would explode out and then, to take down all the bad guys. And things like MacGyver and, people who were always being like cool and resourceful with inventing stuff. And I think it kind of ignited that passion in me that I didn't even think, oh, well, there's not an animation industry in the UK, or Hollywood's not in the UK, or I didn't think, oh, well, I can't do that. I just thought I have to do that. That's what I need to do. So I think animation and making images tell stories, that was always at my core. I think it wasn't until I was doing a lot of art, thinking that was what was going to get me in there, especially at GCSE and A-level. And then when I went to foundation, I suddenly started discovering graphic design and fashion design and everything else. And the graphic design, I remember the graphic design tutor going, "You're coming with me. You're going to go and do." And I didn't resist it. And I don't think it was because I'm a pushover, because I'm not. I think it was because instinctively it felt right. I couldn't explain why. The abstraction that comes from graphic design, especially, but using it commercially to communicate people and to frame a message, it switched something on in my brain. It kind of made that kind of. I know what it is. So I came very close to becoming an architect out of GCSEs and going on to study that. And I think it's this kind of art meets science, logic meets creativity in me. I'm very left brain, right brain balanced, I think. I love being abstract and whimsical, but I also like being very pragmatic and problem solving. And I just combine those two things. So I've always loved maths, science, engineering, but I also love art and photography and experimentation. So I don't see those things as separated out ideas. I really can. I in my lifetime, I discovered design later than I did, I think, animation and moving image. If that answered your question, I can't actually remember what the original question was.
Yeah, no, it does. And I completely understand. As someone who is not officially diagnosed, but I mean, it's pretty obvious that I have ADHD, and very likely odd ADHD as well. Like, I completely resonate with what you're saying about not seeing, say, maths and art as two separate things, but seeing how they connect, how they support each other, how they build together in this sort of network to tell a story, whether that's the story of the world around us or a story that we've created to try and entertain or sell or whatever. they are building blocks that can be interchanged. They're not separate entities that shouldn't meet in the middle. Having said that, I am an awful mathematician and cannot add two and two together for toffee, but I can draw you a good picture. I get what you're saying. And you mentioned about Prometheus being um, the sort of the big starter for 10 for territory in terms of getting known for that kind of work. And I know when you and I spoke before this, I mentioned to you about my company, my first company, doing the digital activations for that movie. And I would love to know for you, like as you worked on that, you mentioned about the love of anime and finding that sort of connection with your daughter. Sci-fi in general, I know anime is not sci-fi, but kind of extending that out. Was that something that you were already into? And so this movie comes along and this is a oh wow moment, or was this more about the work and getting that contact and getting that client, doing a great job and delivering?
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. So I don't know if I'm not going to answer your question, but I think I might give you an interesting response. So the way that I've always thought about things is don't work on the things that you're just offered, but kind of try and shape the projects that come to you. And I think in some ways, I think the world knew that Prometheus would be a great project for us to start on, as a studio. I just say that because I think that, I've always said to myself, well, because I had quite a big argument with my dad very early on, and we didn't speak for some time because he didn't want me to become an artist or a designer or understand any of this world. And I think I've had a chip on my shoulder from that point of, no, I can make art and design work as a career. I can make it financially pay. But for me, I struggle with doing something with my life that doesn't have meaning, and I struggle with doing something with my life that I don't really enjoy. And my wife gets eternally frustrated with me for that way of being. It can be quite annoying to be married to, but I don't accept that you can't work on things that are just brilliant creatively and pay the bills. Like I just if it was all just about money, I would have probably gone and been a banker or something. I would have done something completely different. This will pay the bills, but I have to be doing interesting work. And science fiction films interest me. They just do. And I was so inspired by Star Trek, Star Wars, all of those wonderful 80s films. Like I'd love Fraggle Rock, and but there's but I want the next generation to love that as much, because the world building has been so incredible, and because the design of the film has been amazing, and I just don't see why. I think having belief is such an important thing. Believing that you can work on those projects and that you're good enough to work on those projects. You have to back it up with being good enough to work on those projects, and that comes through. It's just hard work. That's the simple equation is do more hours than everyone else, and you will be good enough. They are incredibly demanding projects, but there was no. I was excited that the first opportunity that came to us was Prometheus, but I would never let that opportunity down by not doing it justice, which, as I hear those words coming out of my mouth, it sounds quite arrogant and conceited, but I think you owe it to the project to give it the hours, to give it the attention, to do the great work. Because if those opportunities turn up and you don't do something great with them, they won't come back. We've worked with Ridley and his team a number of times since. And because we took that project so seriously and we gave it everything, oh my God, did we give it everything? That team then splintered off and took our reputation with them and invited us onto other projects. That doesn't happen if you half-ass it or just do a 9 to 5. It's a privilege to work on the things that we love doing, and you need to kind of just take that seriously. And yeah, so we took it with open arms and we ran with it, and we've done that a lot with the projects over the years. Is we've kind of we've paid that opportunity with the attention, the energy that it deserves, really, without kind of repeating myself. And I think you have to do that. I think if you get those big things coming along, then you need to meet it with the respect that it deserves. And there's a great, I can't remember which book it comes from, and this is definitely not my idea, but just, all businesses, if they're going to survive, need to be ready for good luck and they need to be ready for bad luck. And we've had a good amount of bad luck in the last few years, and we've had a great amount of good luck as well. And you just need to prepare yourself for both sides of that equation so that you continue to flourish, really. And we can't pretend that graphic design or digital design or motion graphics isn't part of the same business world. It all applies. All of those kind of tropes, things that are said repetitively time and time again, they are relevant, they are valid, even if we sit in the creative industries. So I try and keep that front of mind when I'm saying yes to these things.
I not only do I understand that answer, I really love hearing it. It's very much the same philosophy that I took, which is when I started my first company, it was just me in the spare bedroom working on banner adverts for toothpaste that would only ever be seen by people that live in Iowa or somewhere like that, right? And because I had worked with 20th Century Fox whilst at Microsoft, when they needed something, they came knocking. And you recognize that opportunity. This is A, people that I really, really want to work with because I enjoyed working with them when I was at Microsoft. B, this is an organization, this is a name that I really want to be involved with. And my new fledgling company is going to do really well because of that engagement with that company. And C, this is work that I'm really invested in. This is a movie that I really love or a franchise that I really love. And so, yeah, I desperately want to work on this because I'm very interested. And
Yeah.
so you talked about the way to get good is to just put more hours in than everybody else. When you're doing that on a project that you really love and you're really invested in, that's not an effort, right? To put those extra hours in because you love what you're doing. And so very quickly, when Fox knocked on the door, then it was working till sort of 2:30, 3 in the morning on whatever the delivery was needed to be done because it was a tight turnaround. But I had no problem doing that because of all the factors that were
Mm.
associated with it. So I completely get what you're saying. And then yes, you do a good job, and then your name gets known. They bring back another job for you, and then maybe another studio comes and knocks because someone has moved to a different studio or whatever it might be. So I completely understand that. When when you think back to that bullet point history that you took us through, is there a moment in there that you would go back to yourself then at the age that you were, but knowing what you know now? And if there is, what would you say to yourself?
It's going to be a lot harder than you thought. um, I mean, I think back to when we first set up the studio, and you kind of think it's going to be all about the work, but it's not all about the work. I mean, some of it's about the work, but actually, it's about great people, and it's about good processes, and it's about PR and marketing, and a whole load of there's kind of 7 key aspects to running a business that, as a designer, you either choose not to think about or are oblivious to. Having wonderful producers and project managers is worth its weight in gold, as is having an excellent finance team. But yeah, just the sheer amount of hours setting up your own company and studio, and the kind of the personal sacrifice, because my wife and I got married just before setting up the company, and I don't think either of us were quite ready for just what that was going to ask of us. And yeah, kind of the sacrifice of the time together. I don't think I've missed child's birthday or missed a key date or anything like that, but it's a juggle, you know, it's a real juggle, and it does pull on you, and it's really, really hard. But it's really, really hard. And with that comes just a huge sense of achievement. So, and which is fine. Like, that's the upside, is that you do things that aren't just the everyday, you know? And so it's worth it in that respect. And yeah, and I'm really kind of proud of what we've built as a studio. But yeah, just to answer your question honestly and directly, just the sheer amount of work and effort it takes to run a creative studio is just nuts. And I'm pretty sure it's the same for anyone that starts up a company. You know, it takes a lot of hours, it takes a lot of energy, and I am grateful that I was naive and oblivious to that knowledge before I stepped into it. I don't know if would I stop myself? Maybe I would stop myself. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Like, would I want a simpler life? I don't know if I would, actually. You know, there's been times where I've thought, oh, I could pack all of this in and just go back to being a freelance designer or something. But I don't think I could do that anymore. I think I love the challenge of it so much now, and I love building something rather than projects. That I don't think I could let go of that. It's quite I was going to use the word a buzz. It's not a buzz. I think it's complicated. I think it's complicated, and there's no simple answers, and that's what kind of makes it interesting. Like, I wake up and in the morning, I don't necessarily know how the day's going to end, and I certainly don't know how I'm going to solve all of the things that are coming at me. But I kind of love it for that, really. Yeah. Sorry. Again, don't know if I've answered your question, but that's what I would say to myself, is just be fitter. Actually, I've had an ongoing fight with my weight and my health, and I think looking after myself more would have been the advice that I would have given to myself, is take better care of your health. You know, I think, like, if I'm being kind to myself, you're going to need lots of energy. So, like, take the gym seriously, take your diet seriously. I think could have been a good bit of advice to a younger self. Now it's one that I'm kind of giving to myself right now.
I think that's a great piece of advice. I'm just going to pause slightly there, because as you
That's
may have
invading.
seen, yeah, there you go,
I'm
danger.
amazed my Dachshund hasn't barked at us yet.
I think that's a great piece of advice. And, you know, as someone reaching that age where I start to make that noise when I get out of any chair or sofa, you know, I'm kind of also wishing that I had perhaps looked after my health a little bit better than I have done over the years. Hi. If what we're talking about in this episode is resonating with you, the challenges faced are the ones that are in front of you right now, the path they've taken is your dream career path, whatever it may be, stick around until the end of this episode to find out how you can work directly with me to level up your leadership skills. Get 30 years worth of experience downloaded into your skill set in just 4 weeks. At the same time, meet amazing other design leaders as part of your cohort. Thanks for listening. I'll see you at the end. You talked about, you know, finding pride in what you've achieved with Territory, which is more than understandable. And this might be difficult, therefore, but if you look back at, or it may actually end up being the answer, but if you look back at everything you've done over the years, not just with Territory, but since you started, is there one piece of work that you'd pick out as something that you're most proud of?
I think my go-to answer with a lot of interviews is Blade Runner, because it was. I mean, it ticks so many boxes. You know, it was well received in the cinemas. The director was a joy to work with. Paul Inglis, the supervising art director, Dennis was a joy to, you know, just all the great names that were working on that movie were incredible, and got more from us and better from us because of it. So it was a wonderful working relationship, and our team were excellent, and we did brilliant work, and blah blah blah. I would say that. But the problem with talking about Blade Runner is it overshadows so many of the other parts of territory that don't get spoken about. So we've got an amazing creative advertising team that do kind of full 360 campaigns for the entertainment marketing. And they did this beautiful key art poster for an Amazon series called Dead Ringers. And it's such an iconic, beautiful image. And I think I loved that project because it says so much with one image. So often in my craft, I'm saying a lot with images over a period of time, but actually to condense down a narrative into a single image and to make somebody excited to want to watch more, I think there's a real art and a craft in that. And a lot of the work that team does just blows my mind, because I don't think in that way. I can't think in that way. Equally, we've got a digital team. We call them digital, but they hate being called digital, but it makes sense within territory. Forgive me, Perry and team. And so much of their work they can't talk about. So it's really frustrating for us because there's so many things that I want to shout about on their behalf, but NDAs forbid it. But there is one project that we did for Audi, who are an amazing partner. And their design team are something else, like just incredible. So again, you learn from them, they learn from you. Like that is a true partnership. That is wonderful. And we did this project called the Audi Actisphere, which was a concept car by Audi, but they asked us to create and then implement a spatial interface. So at the time, the new Magic Leap headset was coming out, and we took a lot of the learnings from all the kind of holographic stuff that we do in films, but we brought it into the real world, and we had a spatial interface that was talking to the car. You could point at things and the interface would come towards you. It was almost behaved in like an empathetic type manner. And it felt like we were properly delivering against the future vision that would be shown in movies. I love stuff like that. I love it when we can get involved in materially impacting the real world. And I know that we do through feature films and computer games. I know we do, but we're also there to entertain and to move people emotionally, which is a very, very worthwhile thing to do. But sometimes it's lovely to create something that's useful in the world, that solves for something and makes maybe an overall experience better. So yeah, I'm answering your question with the grass is always greener. And I think what I'm most proud of is the variety that we've built out in territory. Like all of those different creative disciplines are interlinked. One team at the moment's working with a world famous architect. We've got another one that's working with a film director, one of the biggest game franchises in the world, incredible automotive design team. Like it's really, really hard to pick your favorite child. And so I kind of go to the core of it, which is, again, it goes to the lesson learned at Why Not Associates, and also kind of my study time at Pixel Park when I was looking at things like the Bauhaus, which was using creativity as problem solving, but don't worry about where you meet the world in that endeavor. So it can be through filmmaking, it can be through print design, it can be through architecture. That shouldn't matter. It's what's the most effective way of either moving somebody or being useful, problem solving. That I enjoy, and I like the dexterity of our studio for that. That's been, I think, the proudest thing for me. And often people say to us, "You can't possibly do all of that." I'm like, well, we're not outsourcing it. It's all done by people, but it's just about having the right. It's about having the right experts and people that are interested in other domains, right? Not just always just working on films. Some of our film teams often work on computer games or car projects, and I'm proudest of that, I think.
I love that. And would you say that works because those other disciplines or industries are things that your talent interested in, or would you say it's because everyone is considering story at the core of everything, or is it a combination of?
So I think naturally design and story are at the core of everything anyway. But I don't know if it's what. Yeah, yes, that is probably the common thread. Is the simplest answer to that. But I think people are just creatives, especially. They can't help but look sideways. They're just it must be the way that we're wired, And I think it leads to personal growth. I think when you step outside of the thing that you're doing and you look elsewhere, in the back of your brain that unlocks something, it allows your kind of, I don't know, your genetics or your brain or whatever it is to kind of problem solve for you without working at it too hard. So informing
Mm.
yourself about other disciplines and other things that's going on. We were deep into R&D on AI years ago, maybe 10 years ago. Just being interested in other things in the world will influence your ability to create interesting work. And so, yeah, I think that's it. It's just having a team of curious people. It's a bloody nightmare to manage. It's it's like a poor production team herding cats the whole time, but it's it yields fruitful results. It means that the work stands up and has rigor to it. I do, I believe in research. I believe in designers, creatives being well informed, educated. They understand the science that they're trying to depict, or they understand the code that they're depicting on that screen, or the car that they're designing for, whatever it might be. I don't think just staying in your lane and understanding how to be a good designer is good enough anymore. I'm not sure it was ever good enough. So, So I think people reading, people informing themselves, people doing research, I think is a key part of it as well.
100%. And I think that comes through in the work that Territory produces. When I look at your show reel and I think about the movies that you've done interfaces for example, they are so successful to me, not just because they look beautiful, but because they feel grounded in the world of whatever the context is of the movie. There is some weight to them in terms of the um, intellectualization of what's being put on screen. They feel connected to the science or the story or the world or whatever it is. There are so many times when you watch a movie and yes, there's the most amazing, beautiful looking screen of someone, I don't know, hacking into the White House or something, but what you're seeing on screen has absolutely nothing to do with hacking or whatever it is in the real world, and I
Mm.
think what's so successful about Territory's output is there is that feeling of, wow, this feels real. This feels like this truly could be whatever the interface for XYZ is.
Yeah, and it's probably said too many times in podcasts, but I think if creative directors, especially, but also designers, if they could just listen more, stop trying to solve the problem, just stop for a second. Don't pitch them. Don't show them what you think should be. Can you just ask
Mm,
questions, please, and listen? And I say
mm,
that because when you're working on a movie, if we get to work with a production designer like Charlie Woods or Patrice or Paul Inglis, they're phenomenal names. Just they've been doing this far longer than we ever have, and they know how to world build. They know how to build these incredible visions. Is the only way to describe it. And all you have to do is just understand their intent and then dial into that. And bring your own expertise, absolutely. Do that. But there's so much that you can learn from the costume department and the art department and the set deck and the painting team. These people can take MDF and make it look like solid metal, rusted solid metal. When you walk around a film set and you're looking at it with your naked eye and you're thinking, this looks a little bit ropey. I'm not sure about this. But then you go behind camera and you look at the monitor and it looks like a real spaceship and you're thinking, this is a dark art. How do people do this? And so, yeah, working with the other teams and borrowing from them, like working with them, borrowing from them, tuning into the overall creative intent, which is, and that will be the director is helping us all the time with that. But yeah, listening, getting creative directors and art directors and designers to listen more than to answer is I think a big part of, to your point, that intent.
Fantastic piece of advice, and I think it's one that creatives would do well to heed, especially those that have reached or attained, have just newly attained an ACD or a CD position to yes, brilliant, well done, got there. Now, don't let go of the reins. Hold your ears and listen to what's being said. Understand your client. Understand what they're trying to achieve with their product
It's
or
really
service,
hard. I
something like
mean,
that.
I remember when I was younger going through this, and you're like, finally, I've got the opportunity to show them what I can do, and all you want to do is go, look at this great thing, look at this great thing, and when they don't respond with, oh my god, I love that, you're a freaking genius, rather than what is this nonsense, because there hasn't been that conversation, you haven't listened, you haven't tuned into the larger intent of the project. So yeah, I understand. I did it. I did it. We all do it. But yeah,
Mm.
just taking that time to sit back and listen is so key for me.
You you mentioned about, I mean, talking of neurodivergence and ADHD, you mentioned the phrase "the grass is greener," and that instantly got me thinking of a Cary Grant movie from the 1960s, but that of the same title. But also, you talked about having listening to the client and but your team also bringing all of that breadth of experience and interest in different avenues all together. So maybe they're working on for an automotive client, but they're still bringing aspects of entertainment or aspects of gaming into that experience for maybe it's in car or something like that. And
Mm,
it reminded me of something that I've done with clients so often. When a client is able to tell me exactly what their product or service is, but they can't tell me how they want to communicate it, or they struggle to communicate it clearly. I've found a way of doing it is saying to them, come back to me with 4 or 5 things that you love the look of. They don't need to be anything to do with you or your product or your service, but maybe it's a magazine, or maybe it's a credits for a TV show, or maybe it's a song or whatever. But that is just a way to unlock a way of communicating with a client that can't quite put into words what you need to hear.
mm,
But it is still about getting that breadth of experience from them, right? And kind of pulling it all together into one way of going, okay, now I get you. Now I understand what you mean.
mm.
So it's interesting that you were saying that.
I think ultimately, if you're being a creative leader and you're doing it well, you should not be touching the work. You should be a psychologist, and you're unlocking the potential in your team to do a good job without you there. It's easier said than done, and actually, I find it really hard to train the psychologist because it's like being the driving instructor to the driving instructors. There is a process
Right.
for it, but it takes some time. Um, but yeah, if you're going to succeed as a creative leader, I think everyone should be learning more about psychology and how the human brain works, because
Mm.
we work in such a subjective area, and our clients who are, some of the clients who are decision makers, not all of them. I mean, this is where, I pat myself on the back. We've mostly got very, very articulate, creative clients. Um, uh, we've just had a project with Spielberg. In one sentence, he can course correct the entire project, be super efficient with meaning, and everyone kind of looks at each other, go, "Oh, why didn't we think of that?" Um, but just on the kind of, it's very, very, very hard to articulate what you mean about something creatively. If you're not a creative person and you're working
Mm.
with a creative team and you're doing it over a video call or email, even worse, um, it's just very, very hard. So it's on us to help them to translate what's going on in their head and putting that down, the intent, because I don't truly believe that anyone is not lacking ambition. It's
Mm.
just the means to conveying to the team that they're working with what they're wanting to achieve. So yeah, being that translator again, it goes to listening, but also to empathy and like just giving them those tools and that psychology either for your team or for the client, so that you can kind of align on intent. So I think if you're not aligned on intent, the process becomes frustrating for everyone. So yeah, I do think the best creative directors are psychologists at heart.
I think there's absolutely something to that, and I think it's also, for me, it's also not just about having an empathetic view towards your client or your customer or whatever it may be, but also the other end. If you're producing something that is going to be consumed or used, to have an empathetical understanding of that end of the project spectrum, if you like, because it needs both, right? You need to understand human behavior on both ends in order to create an effective bridge. I'm going to take a sort of shocking hard turn. I can't think of the right frame of mind phrase right now. But when you look back again at overall of everything that you've achieved and done, is there something that hasn't gone quite according to plan? And what did you learn from that when that happened?
Oh God, where to start? I mean, so much. Like what, this month or just? We could be here for a very long time, Adam. What's a big?
That right there. That's the social media clip from this episode.
I know I need to pick some because well, I need to pick some that won't offend people as well, because there's so many. I mean, there's so many different things. I think some people in my team would like me to say saying yes to things when we should have said no to them, but I don't regret any of those, because if it wasn't that one, it would have been a far worse project to have learnt it on. I can almost hear people listening to this podcast now on my team going, what's he going to say? Which one's he going to go for? And to the point where there was a film director, and I'm not going to name them, that we worked with more recently, and I was like, we're not working with them again. I thought we'd learned our lesson. And they said, no, we've got this sussed out. We're going to do it. I was like, are you sure? Like, historically, this has been a very tricky project to work on, and they still went ahead with it, and I was proved right. So sorry, I shouldn't be talking about where I'm getting things right rather than I'm getting things wrong. Decisions. I think sometimes I've overcompensated for things, when a kind of a little adjustment would have been fine. I mean, a good example, when we were looking to set up in the US, we tried 2 locations at the same time. We tried New York and we tried San Francisco. San Francisco has been a phenomenal success. New York's not really happened. And but I don't really see that as a mistake. I see that as just kind of hedging your bets, and we figured out which one went right. I think always my regret is not learning something sooner. So as a company founder, I never know what I don't know before I get there. So you have to keep making mistakes all the time. Like, that is just muscle that you need to be very comfortable in using. Like, I will try 3 different things to test a hypothesis, and maybe one of those works, or maybe none of them work. But there's like, I mean, I say this to my kids all the time, and I try and say it to myself all the time too, which is, if you're getting everything right at school, something's going severely wrong and you are not learning, or you're a calculator or something. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. You have to be okay with mistakes. Otherwise, you're not going to learn. We've grown so much over these 15 years. We've gone from me in my spare bedroom, to however many hundred we are now across 5 different offices, still completely independent, not funded by anyone. Just, it's some people would say, well, that's stupid, but I have to keep, like, I rely on mistakes, like little ones. And then once they talk about this in business books. fire some bullets, test the theory. Once you know the direction that you're aiming at, fire the cannonball. I mean, it's so true. It's not rocket science, but it's really hard to maintain that level of consistency over the years. But we haven't got this big without a shed ton of mistakes. Like all of it, all of it. Every single year there's been mistakes. Hired the wrong person into the wrong role, overpromised on something, maybe said yes to something when I shouldn't have done. But I don't regret any of it, because I think it's really important to maintain ambition and to go, yeah, we can do that. We can figure that out. Absolutely, we can figure that out. And it always course corrects within the project, so we still deliver. Or I say the mistakes are actually coming less out of the projects and the people, and are more coming out of my ability to lead an organization of this size. Like, what gives me the right to feel that I'm qualified to do this, other than I've got it to this point so far? Am I still the right person beyond that? And you talk about the imposter syndrome. That healthy dose of that's there all the time, and I kind of rely on it to get so that it's it's like the nerves before going on stage. They're very useful if you harness it in the right way. And sadly, I think mistakes are the same. We had what we call a fireside chat in front of the London team more recently, and it was pretty much 45 minutes of everyone asking me about all the different mistakes that we've made in the last 2 years, which was a thoroughly humbling experience. But so right, like, we should look at that stuff, because teams on projects have to do that stuff all the time. Like round 1, round 2, round 3. I think on Ready Player One, we got up to version 137 on one of the things that we were designing for. And Stephen was right to keep on pushing it, because it was one of the key assets that then defined the design language and the styling for everything else. So he knew if he hammered us on that one particular element, which was the goggles, as you zoomed out through the goggles in Ready Player One, we got that thing right, everything else would have to reach that quality bar, and he could let go then. So he really, really pushed us very, very hard, along with Roger, the VFX supervisor, and Adam, the production designer. They all pushed us so hard on that one particular moment. But they were right to. Anyway, why am I talking about versions? Yeah, so we're up to probably version 500 on Territory Studio. And now we've got Territory Group, Cantina in it. And they're rolling their eyes at me because we're getting things wrong in terms of like joining up all the studios. We're definitely, to the outside world, I don't know if it looks like this to the outside world, we have not got it all figured out. Just to say that out loud. There's stuff going wrong all the time. It's just never fatal. And you just need to consciously know, okay, I'm going to do loads of stuff that's wrong to help me figure out what's right. And that's fine. And that's normal. And we need to be all right with that. I'm trying to give you like a really juicy what's gone wrong in a really big. So the one that I sometimes go to, it's kind of like therapy for me admitting this. So we were working on Avengers, amazing team, Charlie Woods, production designer, incredible, tons of graphics on the movie. But then we also we typically don't competitively pitch, but Star Wars: The Force Awakens turned up. So, okay, I'm going to break my rule for this one. We'll do a competitive pitch. We did a competitive pitch. It took, I want to say, about 3 months. I think it went on for quite a long time. And JJ picked us to proceed, so we won the pitch. But then suddenly we were across 2 projects, and at the time, I was the sole creative director at Territory Studio. And I was kind of like patting myself on the back, feeling really proud. We've got these 2 massive projects going through the studio. But ultimately, we had to step off of Force Awakens because I was becoming this bottleneck on the projects, which just wasn't sustainable. It wasn't sustainable. And it was a painful lesson. Almost, I almost felt like I went into mourning after that to kind of say goodbye. We set the design direction for the Star Wars films, and then we had to step away at that point. fortunately, we're working on them again now, so I've got over it. But it's taken me 13, 14 years to get over it. So that was a big one. And that made me realize you have to get out of your own way. And I hired Andrew very quickly after that, who has been with us ever since. He's risen up to global executive creative director now. And he's a better creative director than I was. He's built out capacity so we can be on 10 of those projects now and not even break a sweat. And I wouldn't hear anything from the team. It's just all business as usual. But back at the time, at the size that we were at, maybe 20, 25 people, it was too much. It spread us too thin. And it was at that point, I think that was a key moment for us as a studio and a key learning for me, which is, if you want to continue to be on all these great projects and opportunities that are coming your way, you can't continue to be the creative visionary across all the projects. You need to spread that out. You need to share it. You need to get more people involved. And you probably need to step away from the day-to-day creativity on projects. And do you know what? I mean, I've sometimes plenty of therapy over the years. That doesn't sit as part of my therapy. Like, it was quite amazing to me how quickly and how comfortably, once I'd found a great creative director, I could just step away and be okay with that decision very quickly. It didn't take a lot of thought. It certainly didn't take a lot of internal soul searching. And I think that's often why all businesses will come to a natural cap based on the mindset of the individuals within, but especially the leadership. It's very rarely anything else. I think if you can unlock your mindset, it is sometimes the economy around you, definitely, for a period of time. But in good times, if you're finding that you're hitting a wall, whether that's through, creative growth or commercial, financial growth, or the types of projects, the prestige of the projects that you're working on, if you're finding you're capping out on that, it's normally something to do with your own personal mindset that you need to unlock. And I've found that therapy is a great thing, actually, for business growth. I highly recommend it to everyone. If you agree that a personal trainer is a good idea for your body, then maybe you need the same one for your mind, or at least a really good pub and a load of good friends, whatever, whichever version of that you take. I don't know.
I love that as a proponent of therapy for my own mental health but also acting as a mentor for many creatives over the years. That idea that there is someone there who's been through it before, who can just be there with you and talk you through it in whatever modality that might be, whether that's therapy outside of work, whether that's mentorship or whatever it is, coaching, and like let's not ignore the fact that there's a very big difference if you're doing it properly between mentorship and coaching. Like they're two very, very different aspects. I could never be a coach, for example. I've got far too big an ego, and I'll jump way too quickly to telling you how I did something in order to be a coach. Like that's not my bag. But I think there is something so incredibly important about that, and I love hearing you say that. And I think it's really important that people who have achieved the level of success that you have are open in talking about those things and saying, yeah, this helped me and it will help you as well. We don't have any qualms about walking around with a plaster cast over our arm if we break a bone. And yet there's still this massive stigma about talking about mental health or getting coaching or mentorship or whatever it might be. And so the more that people like you talk about it in places like this, the better, I think. Coming back to where we were before we went on this tangent, what's something outside of work that you're really proud of?
Again, I've listened to other podcasters and they're great at, talking about children, family, all that kind of stuff. And that is completely true. If I'm going to answer from what's top of my list, it's definitely my family. I love my garden, of which you can see a little bit of it behind me. Well, actually, I'm not proud of it. There's a lot of work to do out there over the winter. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. I think I think I've been through a lot of personal growth. Kind of going back to that point a little bit. So I'm proud of myself for that. I'm proud of myself of not shying, and this has been so true more recently. We've had some big discussions between different teams and things, and I've learned how much more improvement I need to go through as a leader to lead territory through the next phase. I personally got a lot of growth still to come. So yeah, personal growth is a big one, and I can see that I'm going to need to go through a lot more growth for the next phase of territory and what we're doing. But I'm proud of where we've got to. I am really, really proud of where we've got to and what that means for me as an individual. But yeah, outside of work, I think it's so connected, because you become more aware of your emotions. You become more finely tuned to your mental health, your physical health. Because it demands of you, you become far more aware of that. And ultimately, through that personal growth, I become a better father. I become a better husband. My wife is incredibly patient with me. And she's an amazing person when it comes to thinking about emotions, talking about emotions, just talking things out. I'm not, yeah. So what am I most proud of? I think it's personal connections, relationships, family, friends. It's a very small group, but I've got people that have known me for 40 years, and yeah, it just the relationships get stronger all the time. So that really, without being too cheesy.
I don't think it's cheesy at all. I think it's very human. What gives you hope right now in the world?
I mean, that suggests that there's no hope. I think our dystopian futures have rubbed off on you, Adam. What gives me hope? It sounds terrible, but we all die.
Where's this answer going?
Well. So it all ends the same way, right? It doesn't matter if if I own Territory Studio and it does really well, or so life is finite, and so my view on that is just enjoy right now. Don't hope suggests a look to the future. What I love about the movies that we work on, they're not really about the future. They're always about the now. They're using that language to project ahead and say, if you do this thing right now, this is where we're going to end up. And so I think people think that I'm caught up in the future, and I'm not. I love it as a facsimile for the now. And so yeah, so hope is we're all still breathing. We are going to die one day. We're going to have to say goodbye. So just enjoy what you have right now. And everything else will work itself out. Just be a great version of what you're doing now. And the rest of it will figure itself out. I think if you get too caught up on hope and future, that can be as much of a spiral as hanging on to the past and being held back by that. It sounds very Buddhist, but it's right. The Dalai Lama is onto something. Just living in the now and enjoying the now. Don't worry about hope. Just live in this moment, I think is the best way to look at things. So hopefully I don't need hope. Yeah, no, I think the Dalai Lama would shoot me down on that one. But yeah, I'm kind of when I'm being my best self, I'm just in the moment.
I love that. And as someone who is working hard to try and find and maintain presence, I completely hear you. I think that's that's the only way to truly live, is to be present.
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
one final question for you. It's the same question that I ask everybody who appears. Are you, David, still awaiting approval?
No, no, but I never was. um, no, I don't think so. Um, I'm content. I'm never happy, but I'm content.
Love it. This is your chance to let people know how to get in touch with you, what you've got going on, what things are coming up. Your chance
Yeah.
to plug whatever you like.
Yeah, I mean, so people can get hold of me on Instagram or LinkedIn. It's very easy to get hold of me via Territory as well. We've got a bunch of emails. About 20 people look at the inbound emails at any given time. So you would definitely reach me through there. You're more than likely to reach me through LinkedIn as well. Or come and knock on the door at 132 Goswell Road in London, and I'm there most days of the week. Yeah. We like hearing from other creative people, other people that are interested in the things that we're excited by, whether that's robotics, car design, feature films, computer games, whatever, whatever that thing is. I think if you're passionate about what you're doing, we'd love to, we'd love to have a chat, really. So yeah, most modes of communication are viable. I don't think we have a fax machine.
Okay. Well, on that note, I think that's a perfect way to end this. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation. Thank you for joining us, David.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adam.
If today's conversation got you thinking about your own growth as a creative leader, then my program, Supercharge Creative Leaders, might well be the next step for you. It's a 4-week cohort designed to help those in leadership positions and those aspiring to be in leadership positions to lead at a world-class level. You'll learn how to communicate with impact, grow your confidence, and lead teams that thrive, all without losing your creativity. It's a mix of pre-recorded video sessions, live Q&As with me and the rest of your cohort, and an incredible community of peers who will support you along the way. People who've already been through the course have gone on to win new roles, land promotions, get huge multi-million-dollar pitches, and they all put it down to the course and the confidence it gave them. So if you're ready to get noticed, get promoted, or finally step into that dream role, join the next cohort. Head to growwithadamjennings.com and sign up to Supercharged Creative Leaders. I can't wait to start working with you.